afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a great day today. I've got Paul Schultz here with me.
Good afternoon, everybody, from beautiful, sunny, at this moment anyway, Clearwater International Headquarters of UDS, Florida.
Well, today we want to talk about cash deals. Is it really a cash deal? And I thought we'd get started today by asking all of our participants a question. And my question...
Oh, wait, this is audience participation?
Yes, it is.
You woke me up. I didn't realize.
All right. Well, it's kind of a survey. I know nobody likes to talk, so I threw a question out there for you, and I kind of want to know what is your current PVR on cash deals? Is it 100 or below? 100 to 200, 250 plus? Don't know. What is PVR? Getting some votes here. Right now. Probably we're looking at a third that are 100 to 200, and then I've got 67% of those attending that say they are 250 or above.
Hey, good work then. We got the upper level of the class here, all the A+ people here.
And it ended up being we not everybody's voting, but right now we're at 75 above 250 and 25 at 100 to 250. It just dropped a little. Looks like we're going to end up at 60% at 250 plus and 40%.
This is anonymous, by the way. It's not like the polling places where the Russians are voting for you and they know who you are.
Yeah. So go ahead and close that poll. So that's a good question. That's what we're kind of talking about here today is, some ideas, some different things on what we can do to try to take cash deals and turn them into a little bit better opportunities.
That's kind of taking your temperature. If you added another 100 or 200 or even $300 to your cash PVR, and cash deals seem to be becoming more a part of the mix recently, especially during the summer months, how much would it affect A, your overall PVR, and B, your personal income? Because most of the products, actually, the income that's generated from cash deals is all product driven, which is the bulk side of your pay plan.
Well, let's get started. Got another question for you. I'm not going to poll you on every slide, but I do want to try to find out what's going on here because we don't always think of cash deals as the same as we do as others. So my question to you is, what's your attitude when there's a cash deal? Is it just another opportunity? Bring it on. Not a fan of cash deals. I'd rather not do cash deals. Or I will do everything in my power to avoid cash deals. Anybody?
Another cash deal.
Right now we are 100%. Hey, it's just another opportunity. Bring it on. So I'm excited about that, but we don't have there we go. Now we're starting to see some truth fall into it. I think. Not a fan. It's 80-20. About that, most people have a pretty good attitude about them, and
which is reflected
because
of the fact they have a higher PVR than our other groups might have had.
Yeah, and we do have to have that attitude of, hey, if it's cash, I'm going to do everything I can to create some income, whether it's selling products on a cash deal, or when there's an opportunity to bring value to the customer, look for an opportunity to convert, and we're going to talk about both of those. Moving forward. So, let me get that back on there. It all starts in the interview. Everything we do in F&I really kind of comes out of that interview process. And cash deals, finance deals. I got to close the poll. Thanks. Boom. All right. Cash deals, finance deals, lease, really doesn't matter. There's a lot of information that can be gained in the interview. And I do want to, ask you guys, do you interview every cash customer, or is it just kind of bring them in, and let's see what we can do. When we're interviewing a cash customer that we know is going to be cash, our number one goal is to find out where's the money coming from. I read an interesting statistic in NADA report that put out that a little over than 20% of customers who are cash buyers, their money's coming from a borrowed source. So that's a pretty good statistic, that means 1 in 5 may be telling you they're cash, but the money's coming from somewhere else. So where's it coming from? Is it coming from savings, or maybe a home equity loan, an investment account, credit union, a personal loan from mom and dad, brother or sister, uncle or aunt, or, and we want to find that out. So a good question to ask all of our customers who are cash is to just kind of give them this little addition to our script. I'll be processing all the title work, and part of that is the documentation and recording of any liens. Is all or any part of the cash you will be giving me today borrowed? Just a good question to bring into your repertoire, so that if the customer says, well, I'm getting it from my father, do I still have to register a lien, or whatever the answer is, now we have something to go on. Based on the information that we get in the interview, then we have to kind of look at what we have available. Is there anything that can bring some value? And what I'm talking about is looking at our cash programs, our lease programs, and I'm sure you're all doing this, but what is a compelling story for the customer? We still do things like 0% interest, 0.9, no payments for a certain period of time, certain elevated lease rates, great residuals, cash.
I know Hyundai for a long time had an extra $500 or $1,000 if they financed, and that's something we'll talk about in a little bit. Knowing all of those opportunity programs is really important, and usually the desk exhausts those opportunities, but if they don't, certainly you want to take a swing at them.
No question about it. Even if they do exhaust those opportunities, it's probably a good idea, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, for the F&I person to take another pass. And we're going to talk about how you might be able to do that moving forward here in just a minute. One of the things that I do hear from people's personal scripts when they're confronted with a cash deal is they ask questions like this. So why are you paying cash?
Why are you paying cash, John?
And although
that's
a good question to ask, I don't know if I'd ask it that way. When we ask a question, that question in particular, research tells us that it builds resistance and creates a little bit of a defensive posture on the customer, which then causes them to close their mind a little bit. So, if you're asking that question, probably a good reason, a good thing not to. And one of the things that you want to think about when you're converting a customer or you're attempting a conversion is when we're sitting in the F&I office, most often we're sitting on one side of a desk and the customer's sitting on the other side of the desk. And if any of you have ever been in the boot camps or our 5-day, you'll hear me talk about moving around, being more consultative with the customer, moving to their side versus moving, being across for them. And I know that you can't physically do that, but mentally, you got to think about if you're sitting next to somebody, showing them the way. That's the kind of mental position we need to take, and if possible, maybe even slide around when we're trying to convert. So let's talk about that a little bit. I do have another question for you, and here it is. I try to convert cash customers every time, sometimes, rarely. I don't have the time to try to convert cash customers. So I've got one vote for every time. I got sometimes. Right now it's about 50-50. Sometimes it's taking the lead. It's 60-40 right now for everybody watching, and that's pretty common, I would say, wouldn't you, Paul?
Mm-hmm.
We're actually now sometimes is really almost to 70%, and that's pretty representative of national statistics on attempts. And there's lots of reasons why we don't. We're busy. We got a lot going on. There's 3 deals coming. I'd rather get to that deal and try to make some money. Cash customers aren't always open to what I have to say. They're a little more I have limited products that I can sell them, that sort of thing. But what I want to propose to you, let me close that so you can see. What I want to talk about is presenting conversion options as a product. And the concept of thinking of a conversion as we do any other kind of product we have, and I'm not suggesting that you maybe put it on the menu like that, but you could. And
no reason not to.
What I'm talking about is it's a way to say, if I have something compelling to offer the customer, like 0.9% or something like that, we talk to our customers and we tell them, earlier, my job is to go over all your options with you, make sure your paperwork's accurate, complete, review all your payment options, and answer any questions you have. And this is certainly an option that might be available when there's a benefit to the customer. So I would suggest that we start thinking of it that way and present it that way. Couple of ways you can do it. You certainly could include it in a menu presentation of a cash menu. I mean, the idea is you want to sell products to the customer, so you're going to prepare a cash menu just like you would, and then maybe you could present it that way, or you could do a separate menu and present the customer with a separate menu as, hey, there's one more option that you have that I haven't shared with you, and here it is. Let me get back on here. Okay, finance as a menu product. Certainly, there's some things that we've talked about doing in the past. We want to utilize any options that we have. We want to show the lowest interest rate we have available for converting them to finance it. And I would suggest, Paul, you can agree or disagree, that trying to present multiple conversions to a customer is difficult. Let me talk to you about lease. Let me talk to you about finance. Pick the one that seems to have the most benefit and go with that. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Really this whole scenario, it has to be the most engaging, and the customer has to have the most trust in you, because you're going to kind of act as a semi-financial consultant during this period. And yes, you want to go down the avenue of, it looks like they trade regularly every 3 years, then you may want to investigate a lease. If it looks like they're going to keep the vehicle a little bit longer, then maybe finance is the best alternative. But you need to do that. Some of that is going to be done during the assessment, during the introduction or interview process, and then the rest you kind of gather as you further build rapport and you further investigate their conversation as far as how they're going to keep the vehicle and how they're going to use it and when their next likelihood of trade is and so forth. But once you lock and load, you really need to be expert then from there on as far as the avenue you take.
One of the things that I've found in getting ready for the webinar and doing some research, when polled, F&I managers, when asked about why they don't do or attempt cash conversions, the number one answer is, I just don't have the time. I have to get people in and out of here. It's a Saturday, I got 2 waiting, I got to get in, and a conversion takes as long as a menu presentation, but actually longer, because I've got the menu presentation and the conversion part of it. So in this example, you've got a conversion where we're converting to finance. What you might want to consider doing is, instead of trying to make it completely specific to the customer every time, prepare some of these in advance and keep them like you would an evidence manual. There's nothing to say, look at a popular, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 purchase amount to finance, and kind of print these in advance and keep these on hand, so that you could say, Mr. Customer, you're purchasing a $48,000 vehicle, or the amount due today is $48,420. If you were to put, say, $8,400 and change down, you'd be financing $40,000, and here's what it would look like. And I wanted to present the concept to you. Have that done ahead of time, and you don't have to worry about trying to calculate it and print a contract and show it to them. You can sell the concept in advance. And there's a couple of other ways that you can do that.
And in the background, there was a critical aspect of the overall presentation scenario, and that is printing a sample finance contract or having a sample available that shows them the actual interest, because while you're talking, they're trying to extrapolate and understand what you're talking about. Until they see it in black and white, they really don't have a clear vision of how you're presenting this and where you're taking them and how inexpensive the actual cost of the money, use of the money is. Conversions
need to be, we're asking you to do something that's pretty tough. A conversion is complex, but we're asking you to try to keep it simple and keep it quick. So that's why printing these things and getting prepared ahead of time can help you, in the sense of, if you keep these things, you can sell the concept. If the customer's interest, then we can get into the detail. But if they're interested and we're getting into the detail, they're okay with it because they're waiting to find out the answers and they're engaged. Good. So here's a couple of other things that you can do. This is an example for the webinar here of a young buyers on a pre-owned, because we tend to think of conversions. By the way, in my research, the average age of a conversion customer who agrees to a conversion is 51 years old. So we tend to think conversions as being for older people, but they're really for anybody with cash. Even say we've got a couple of young buyers who have saved up some money and they want to finance a used car purchase, and this is just an example. I'm not going to read this to you, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about optionality. One of the things we find with people under 30 is they really like options. They like choices. Well, everybody does, but they tend to like them even more. And we want to talk about that word optionality. It gives you some optionality to use the money in other ways. And what I've done here is I've just taken this $14,000 purchase, financing $11,000, and saying instead of giving me all the money, if you were to take that $11,000 and invest it over a 5-year period based on these returns, this is what you could look at. And I can show them that the interest paid versus interest earned is in their favor. With a younger buyer, you could really kind of blow their mind a little bit and say, what if you could afford to make the $205 payment out of your paychecks, what if you took that $11,000 and used the power of a lump sum investing instead of 10% every month and throwing $200 at it every month? Just start out with a big chunk of like 11 grand and put it into maybe a one-time 401k contribution, and just shows you what that could do over time. 3%, 5, 7, and 9. I mean, heck, in 30 years, your 11 could grow to at 3%, 26. You more than double your money. But if you can get into the 7 and 9% range, you're really talking some serious. That $11,000 has grown to $145,000.
It really illustrates the power of compounding that they get to take advantage of when they have that larger sum.
That lump sum, and this is something that you could print ahead of time and have in your conversion, data, just to kind of sell the concept. And then again, once you've done that, you can go into detail.
And there are a lot of online resources you can use, bankrate.com, maybe some of those other ones that generate those, and they'll generate them on the fly for you and become proficient at those so that you can use them to your benefit.
Yep. We can do the same thing on a lease. If a lease program looks better, obviously, some of the advantages to leasing, you've got options instead of obligations. There's a little less risk in a lease. You're not going the whole term on the lease. You have on the ownership, you have the opportunity to either buy it or get out of it. You can walk away. There's the one pay aspect to leasing, which works real well when we're trying to convert. So we want to take a look at all of our manufacturer programs and know what makes sense and when we're ready to go with it. Here's another thing, just an example that I threw in here. Just an optionality, again, talking that term, trying to bring that into our vernacular and just using it as a depreciation hedge. One of the things that you see in the news a little bit is that the car business is doing really well, but there is, the more expensive cars get and the more that people are buying, the more that are on the market, you have these depreciation issues. And cars are depreciating a little faster than they ever have in the past. I got some data from a TrustedChoice.com on May 14th, 2018, talking about depreciation averages. And the average, and I just used this purchase of a $48,000 purchase. That's really not as relevant as is the depreciation numbers would be consistent with any vehicle because these are averages. Instant depreciation is $11,000. The minute they drop, 11%. The minute they drive off the lot, it depreciates 11%. First year average is 25. By the third year, it's depreciated 46%. Fourth year is 52. And this just gives you an example of how you might be able to hedge against that depreciation by financing and investing the difference. And as you can see on the investment side, if they were to invest it, they're ending up with a $32,470 versus the future value. It gives you that hedge. They're about $7,500 ahead, but they've also had the use of the $30,000 over the period of the loan.
And it's still in the bank.
And it's still in the bank. So some of the benefits are, that we mitigate the depreciation loss. There's less risk, flexibility, liquidity, credit building. Now in the investment, I use 7%, but I got that off of Morningstar on an article on experts forecasting long-term stock and bond returns, and that's as recent as January 2018. Brings up another point. Anytime you're doing a conversion or working with a conversion and you're using interest rates or you're using any kind of data, always use a third party to confirm your data so that, it's believable. And people tend to believe those third party sources, especially when they're as well known as, say, Morningstar. Trusted choice, maybe not as much, but I like the name, right? So, here's another little thing that you could try is, I would like to ask you, Mr. Customer, let's say you go ahead and write me the check for $30,000 and you take delivery of the vehicle. And if I were to turn around and say, today's your lucky day and I'm going to give you 30 grand back, what would you do with the 30 grand? Would you go on vacation? Would you invest it, put it in savings, buy some furniture? What would you do with it? And whatever they say, we just say, hey, we can do that now.
Vegas, baby.
But it's a good question to ask because it gets them to think of what they would do with that lump sum of money if it was a windfall and given to them. And now they have that optionality to go ahead and do that because we can finance the purchase, lease the purchase, and they can take that money and do something else. So just a question to kind of ask, something to put into your tool belt and use once from. You're going to say something, Paul?
Yes, I have a question.
What is that,
John,
Paul?
what percentage of cars are financed?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, Paul. What do you think? What is finance penetration?
Finance penetration is the number of cars that are actually, wait a minute.
Financed?
Everybody's car is financed, whether it's through one of the banks, through a credit union, or using, for instance, the Bank of John.
Yes.
And so the Bank of John may not be the least expensive way to finance this car.
No, and those are the kind of things, that's loss cost. Those are the kind of things that we probably need to talk about more and feel comfortable talking about with our customers for sure.
One way or another, they're all financed.
It's true. Some other potential benefits, limiting risk, we talked about that, how that can happen with a lease and those types of things. It gives the customer the opportunity to put that money not into the depreciating asset, but put it out there and turn it into capital work and earn.
Is that from the grilled cheese sandwich I brought for lunch?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't spend a lot of time looking for that graphic, I'll tell you that.
I like it.
We showed an example of a hedge against depreciation, and we can go ahead and do that. It is those. Market conditions change. They're up, they're down, and I'm not talking always about the stock market. I'm talking about the car market.
Absolutely.
If you're driving a Ford Fusion right now, and you just bought it, and they're not going to be making it next year, what does that usually do to values?
It's going to depreciate the value. And what about if Aunt Martha just tears the side off the car while you're parked in Publix and you come out and all of a sudden there's a lot of damage that's done to that car? The resale market in the future value is severely diminished when there's damage to the vehicle.
Yep.
And many of these vehicles now are getting repaired when they're close to total losses, which is, again, a real debilitating situation for future value.
And liquidity. I don't know about you, but I like cash.
Cash is king.
I don't like to keep all my money in cash, but I like to have some cash on hand, and I like to have that rainy day fund. Experts say we need at least 3 months of income set aside as a rainy day fund. So that's another question to ask younger buyers when you're trying to convert, is to say to them, ask them, do you have a rainy day fund? Well, this could be it. And give them that opportunity to be a little more liquid.
Either that or some people have saved money to pay for a car or a big, huge down payment on a car, but they have credit cards that are out there that they're paying 15 or more % on, which it only makes good sense as kind of a semi-financial advisor to look at those alternatives and see if maybe taking that cash and paying down a credit card or paying off a credit card would be a much more logical consideration as opposed to put in the trunk of the car and hoping then a few years when they open that trunk it'll still be there.
Interesting. I read an article on Money Matters where they were talking about what you would do with $10,000, and if you were given $10,000, what would you do with it? And the people they surveyed, the number one answer was pay off credit card debt. Number one. So it's something that if we know that we might want to mention that. Would you pay off credit card debt? Would you do this? Would you do that? Give them the answers that we want to hear. And statistically, paying off credit card debt is the number one answer. So
could be rebuilding credit too. Maybe some people saved up enough money to pay cash for a car because they have credit issues, and that's something you're going to have to investigate. Maybe during the introduction you might do that, but it might detect that. But that would be an alternative too, using a large piece of that as a down payment, putting the rest in the bank, and reestablishing the credit.
Well, one of the things before we kind of get to the end here, let's review a little bit, Paul. You know, a couple of takeaways. Probably one takeaway is, you know, presenting a conversion as a product, thinking of it as a product, as an option for the customer. As I'm going through their options, here's another one that I should present to you, and here's why I'm presenting it. It does have a benefit that I think I should bring to your attention. I think the other thing that we want to think about also is being prepared ahead of time. Conversions, the reason most F&I managers don't try to convert is the time commitment it takes to make that happen. So prepare ahead of time in the sense of having some examples in an evidence manual that we can use and pull out to sell the concept. You know, and think about it. If I'm a cash buyer and I'm buying a $38,000 car, well, I'm going to show them a $30,000 to finance example. You know, so I do 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50, and say I have those examples ready, and I just haven't put the money down to the example I'm showing them, and it'll be exactly the same.
Or the other side is people are going to be all right with, okay, that's pretty close to what you're financing. Would you like to finance the full balance? It would be a little bit higher, but or do you want to just settle it to that level? And you can use that to your benefit as far as whether you need a down payment or not.
The other thing, and we'll wrap up with this, is add some things to our scripts. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, part of what I do is prepare all the title work for you, and part of that will be registering any liens. Is any or all of the cash you'll be giving me today borrowed from any source? That's a good question to ask. The other one is, if I was to give you the $30,000 back that you're giving me today after the purchase of the vehicle, what would you do with it? And then go there and say, well, we could do that now.
Especially if they say invest it, because those people are the best ones. When they give you a high investment indication, that is, folks, I'm envious of you that you can write a check for this car. Do you keep your money invested? Yes, I do. Do you use a particular source? Yeah, I keep it in in Merrill Lynch. Okay, do you get a pretty good return? Many people get good returns there, I've heard from. Yes, I do. You know, it's 8%. Okay, immediately you have some great comparison that you can use. At an 8% return, it's going to diminish that cost of funds on your finance contract dramatically. When you do the math, those people are going to have thousands, literally, that they're going to be able to keep in their investment account. And it's something that you set the stage for at the beginning of your menu presentation when you say there are other options available to you, and it's my responsibility to present those to you. Boom, there are the other options. Frequently, the other side, it's a benefit of a cash conversion or other conversion, is that once you convert people, they typically are in for other product options as well. They become much more, you've really built rapport with them. You have their trust, they have your trust, and they're going to participate in your options much more readily than someone who is just kind of a bystander writing a check to you.
Well, we've reached the end of our time. Does anybody have any questions before we go? Comments? Well, I didn't think so, but appreciate everybody for joining today. If you're interested in getting a copy of the presentation, just email me at jtaber@udsdealerservices.com. I'd be glad to send you a copy. And if not,
have a great rest of the day.